99 people, just one more and we'll start. So I'm waiting for one more person to join so that the counter hits 100, and the 100 it is. Great. Let's get started, guys. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining EliteCISOs weekly session that we again start to deliver 11 a.m. Thursday every single week. In 2021, we did not miss even a single Thursday, and every Thursday we delivered these sessions where we bring industry experts and we talk about different cybersecurity topics. So I really appreciate you guys taking out time and joining this session. As you see, the title is very interesting for today's discussion and today's session. The topic is deterministic protection, making a zero-day attack irrelevant, right? We all fear 0 days. We all define different protection around it. So today we have great speakers. We have Rohan from Virsec, and we have Mr. Satyavrat Mishra, who is AVP Corporate IT at Godrej Industries Limited. We have these two eminent speakers who will talk about around the topic of how do you ensure that you can protect your environment against 0 days, right? So that's what the topic is going to be. From the agenda perspective, as you see on the screen, it's a quick welcome that we do, 11 a.m. to 11:05 in terms of defining what the topic is, who the speakers are going to be. And then we will have about 20-25 minute session from Rohan. Rohan will talk about Virsec approach in terms of ensuring how do you protect yourself from 0 days. So that's from a product side. Now, after product side, we will move to the corporate side, where Satyavrat will talk about how they defend Godrej from a 0-day attack perspective, right? They might refer about Virsec as well in terms of how Virsec helped them protect from 0 days. So that's going to be a very interesting session. I myself is looking forward to that. And then Satyavrat's session will be about, again, 15-20 minutes. And then we will save about 10-15 minutes at the end for Q&A because it's a very relevant topic. And I'm sure there'll be a lot of questions. So we'll save about 10 minutes at the end for Q&A. I will share the password to download your participation certificate. And then we will have Wheel of Fortune, where the giveaway for today's session is a smartwatch. Okay, guys. Now, if you have been attending in past, can you type in chat what comes next? Can you type in chat what comes next after we do the initial introduction? Stand and attend. Awesome, guys. So you have been attending this session. Wonderful. Stand and attend. We threw this challenge every single time in 2021. I do not want to do away with it. It is very much essential. Why? Because everybody knows sitting is new smoking. If you sit a lot, you are going to get all these problems, right? Foggy brain, weak abs, soft glues and everything. Again, we are back to work from home. Around India, the Omicron is spreading. I hope you and your family members are staying safe. But again, if you're going to sit at home, you are not going out for exercising or even to office. You are going to spend a lot of time sitting on your chair. If you're going to sit a lot, you will have all these problems. What is the solution? So it is so important, guys, that out of 1 hour session, I still want to, dedicate about 2-3 minutes talking about it. You see this picture in every session that we do, but I wanted to play a video as well that will elaborate in terms of why sitting is so dangerous, right? What you can do about it. So next, I'm going to play a quick 1-minute video, though it is a bigger one, but we'll cut it short just to 1.5 minutes, and then we'll get started with our session. Let me play. Hopefully the audio is going to be loud enough, but let's see.
Let's first talk about the problem itself. What is it that we're trying to solve here, and where did the deed actually arise from in the first place? Now, you see, sitting for long hours leads to weakening and wasting away a large leg muscle. Hips and back won't support you well enough. Basically, they get weak. Sitting causes hip flexor muscles to shorten and can lead to problems in the hip joints as well. There are reports now which talk about cancer. Emerging studies suggesting prolonged sitting may increase chances of developing some types of cancer. Increased risk of heart disease as well is being talked about. Increased insulin resistance in the body as well, basically leading to diabetes if you sit for too long. Increased risk of varicose veins, which are basically means there are faulty valves within your veins that allow blood to pool as well. That can misfunction if you're sitting for too long. And basically, sitting for long hours can cause stiff neck, shoulders. We've all had it. And while all this is being talked about, minded, this is not just some takeaways that people have talked about. This is well-established data that has come in the government of Victoria, Australia, and the Mayo Clinic, UK as well. Well, they have documented all of this. So, well, that's the problem really, and one that has been much talked about. What is the solution? Well, it is quite simple that we are talking about, quite ingenious as many say as well. It is simply standing desks.
Great, guys. So it's a 5-minute video. I will share the link over the chat. You can go through that. But again, the problem is that we sit a lot, right? So what I do is we give this challenge every time in our session that, okay, instead of just sitting, stand, guys, come on, this 1 hour that you're going to spend in this webinar, at least that part you can stand. And if you stand, you are going to get all these benefits, right? You're going to think sharper, your heart will be better, you will lose more calories. So with this, let me challenge you all, guys, stand and attend this session. If you accept the challenge, go to the chat and say, yes, you are accepting it. Let us see the energy, the people who are going to accept this challenge. Amazing. I'm not sure how Satyavrat and Rohan are placed from the delivery perspective. They cannot stand because of, they got to present it. But yeah, this challenge is for everyone. Great. With this, I see a lot of people have accepted this challenge. Really appreciate it, guys. Thanks a lot for sharing your energy. With this, let me transfer it over to Rohan for the main session. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Vikas. Let me quickly share my screen, and I request you to confirm that you can share the screen that I've shared and hear me fine as well.
Yes, I can see us.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this session. It's a pleasure to be among all of you, and especially with Satyavrat sir, and talking about a very important and relevant topic that we are all addressing today in one way or another, right? How do you handle 0 days, right? And for next few minutes, I'm going to talk about how Virsec brings up a different approach with the deterministic platform, which has an aim to make 0 days completely irrelevant. And like we saw in the video that Vikas shared, right? We need to know why is the problem exists, right? We need to understand what is the problem before we actually find out solution for that. So let's talk about that. Some first principles around this whole concept of 0 day, right? What are 0 day vulnerabilities, 0 day exploits, 0 day threats? Because sometimes these words are often used interchangeably. From an attacker's or bad guy's perspective, right? What they are doing is, number one, finding a vulnerability, most likely in systems that or applications that they want to target. Right? These could be operating systems, this could be off-the-shelf applications, and something that we have seen in last year prominently. And finding a vulnerability that is not known to the developers of those applications, not disclosed to them yet. Now, subsequently, this vulnerability can be leveraged by themselves, or these people can go and sell these 0 days in the dark web, as you may all know. And someone would go on and create an exploit which will leverage this 0 day vulnerability. And there won't be any signature available for that in the public domain for that particular exploit. And at the end of the day, the threat actors are going to target by leveraging these 0 day exploits. And the fact would be that the IOCs, indicators of compromise for these kind of attacks, would not be available in the public domain as well. And as a result of that, from an IT perspective, from a defender's point of view, right? What do you handle? As an IT or as a developer, you essentially get 0 days to fix. That's another definition of 0 day. You have 0 day to fix, and a lot of times, a large majority of times, in fact, you are dependent on third parties when the application or the system that is being targeted does not belong to you, or you don't have the access to the code. Microsoft Exchange, Kaseya VSA, these are all quite good examples where there was dependency on third parties, or even in some cases open source community. In the case of the recent Log4j attack, so IT gets 0 days to fix. Advanced exploits often bypass traditional controls. Attackers are using advanced techniques like fileless, memory-based exploits, where you don't really have any artifact on the disks to be able to go on and detect anything using the traditional means. And as a result of that, in a typical environment, it can take days, in some cases, to be able to go on and detect malicious activity. Most of the time, by the time the damage is already done. Now, one of the problem here is patches. Right? Even if, number one, patches are problematic for operations. if you, I'm sure you would have all read the news from last week and experienced as a practitioner also. But Microsoft, with all the good intent, released a patch last Tuesday, which had some 90 plus vulnerabilities being fixed. 6 of them were 0-day, which were also being exploited in the wild. Remote code execution kind of vulnerabilities. But even the might of Microsoft, with all the best of the developers in the world, those patches were buggy and they had some operational impact. So patches are problematic in any case, right? You have to operationalize those patches, but when you get into these kind of scenarios, it is even more troublesome for you to handle because it's a lose-lose situation for you. And this is when they are available, right? This is when the bug fixes are available to you on time or appropriate fixes are available to you. And unfortunately, industry doesn't have great reporting on 0-day, but if you look at some independent reports, it seems that 2021 was the year of 0-day. Right, highest ever 80 plus 0-day exploits, 0-day vulnerabilities being exploited in the wild. And this is, of course, what is available in public domain, right? These 0-days are also used by nation state to target each other, and those don't really see a light of the day very soon. And in some cases, the patches are available quite late. It took some time for Microsoft to patch the Exchange vulnerabilities. It took some time for Kaseya to patch the vulnerabilities, right? So what is happening essentially is critical systems are being targeted, patches are available. If available, it's difficult to operationalize. And when in many cases they are not available on time, they are quite late also, right? And that's where you see happening kind of group targeting Microsoft Exchange servers, Kaseya kind of scenarios, Sprint Spooler, vulnerabilities on network appliances, web servers. Many of them were remote code execution type of 0-day also, right? Which makes it very easy for attacker to get into your organization IT assets and systems and do your damage. And most of the time with traditional controls, you are not in a good position to be able to go and stop these attacks. But at this point, I'll quickly check with Satyavrat sir. Sir, what do you think? Do you also see, and number one is what kind of organization assets, IT assets that you see are being targeted, are being exploited against these 0-day vulnerabilities? And what kind of a business impact that it has, whole patching as well as the existence of vulnerability, which is not known?
Yeah, certainly. So I think, one of the biggest challenge of any 0-day attack is the reaction time, right? So by the time you realize that, there is an attack and you are able to take an action, by the time the damage is already done. And that is the reason why, such attacks are always, catastrophic in nature. And that is, one of the reason why, we are discussing about this whole deterministic kind of security solution, because by default security has been passive, like it is always reactive. Once something goes wrong and then you start taking action. So first there is a bug which is released, and then there is a patch which gets released after 2 months, 3 months time, and then there is a patching cycle depending on what kind of downtimes an organization is able to give you. And that entire period, I mean, even though Microsoft may be releasing every Tuesday, but not every organization is able to implement, right, within a short period of time. And that is the reason why, all this exploitation happens. And that is, one of the reason why, these are so catastrophic in nature, because, immediately within fraction of minutes, hundreds of servers within that particular network zone gets impacted.
Yeah. So with Virsec, right, what we are trying to do essentially, the mission for our company is what we have taken for ourselves is to go and stop these attacks as early as possible and stop these attacks entertainment, right? And if you look at the skill chain also, right, we have all known about the skill chain in different ways, but then the critical stages are quite similar. What attackers do eventually to compromise the system, right, and whatever is their eventual goal. And if you look at that, a very significant step here is when attackers gain execution control over their target system, right? Most often, it is by exploiting a vulnerability and 0-day vulnerability in many cases, as we have seen, right? And then once they have done that, they can move laterally, get their malwares deposited, and they, at the end, goes for the eventual goal. Now, the challenge with the reactive approach that Satyavrat sir was saying, or a probabilistic security controls, is that malicious activity often go undetected. And why is that happening? Because a lot of times, the approach is totally detect and then respond to that situation, right? Which essentially can take, in some cases, 6 to 7 days. Also, that's the industry average. Whereas the ransomware would take few seconds for it to go on and do the damage that it is intending to do. Right. There are 4 reasons I feel, that are behind this problem, right? One is this whole approach of going behind indicators of compromise, IOCs, right? You need to have the hash, you need to have the URLs, C2 URLs, etc. But these are only going to be available post the exploit is in public domain, post the attack is in public domain, right? Before that, it is not going to be available. So we are kind of blindsided by that situation. The second is often when the attackers have a real intent to do damage, right? The artifacts, the things that they are going to use will be very unique. The malware's executables will be polymorphic, whereas they will kind of change their hashes every few days, or even in some cases every few hours also. So, and especially that becomes very more true because you have for hire services on darknet that provides these level of assurance that the exploit that you will buy from them will be completely undetectable because of the obfuscation or encryption that they might be using. And even with the approach and all the might of the latest in the artificial intelligence, right? There is too much of noise, and the reason being because there is all this learning is happening without any context, and the context is important because when we are dealing with end user based endpoints and when we are dealing with server workloads, the approach has to be totally different, right? A lot of these learning based solutions are learning users' behavior, which typically is not relevant in the context of a server workload because you don't really have users connecting or logging into those systems and doing certain activities, right? And these learnings are not change friendly as well. And IT environment, server workload will change, the patches will come, applications will get updated, but then they are not really change friendly. And like last but not the least, right? At the same time, you still need skill sets. You still need SOC analysts who can go and triage these incidents, these events that are coming in, and that's the hard part of it. And that's where it still takes, that dwell time can goes in hours, days, in some cases even months. So what is happening is the way workload protection is being done today is very endpoint centric, right? Which is high on cost and low on actual value, right? You do this data collection, use some sort of AI/ML to identify outliers, then optimize those algorithms for new threads or false positives. Have the SOC analysts triage or hunt, and that's why the managed detection services are becoming more popular because you need that level of expertise, and it's hard to find, honestly speaking. And then of course have a remediative recovery action place. More often that is all triggered. Manually, right? Very little automation in that aspect. Again, this is from a perspective of that. We need to treat end user endpoints very, very differently. Otherwise, the operational cost and the cost of breach also increases drastically. Satyavrat sir, what are your thoughts? Do you agree to that the strategy for end user endpoints, laptops, PC should be different from server workloads?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, because ultimately it is the cost, that you are going to incur. So an endpoint device, even if, a couple of devices gets compromised, the overall cost to the organization may be limited, but a production server, an SAP kind of server, going down because of compromise on a, maybe a weekday or when your, peak load is running, obviously there is no comparison to the cost. So obviously the kind of approach that organization is going to take to protect their crown jewels is certainly going to be far different than managing the endpoint devices.
Yeah. So that's what we are also doing, right? The crown jewels that he said. That's what we do. Our mission is very simple. We want to go and make attacks on the server workloads irrelevant, 0 days as well, right? So essentially taking the guesswork out of this whole equation, right? Which is what is happening in a lot of these signature-based solutions or the IAM-based solutions, right? And we don't want you to, for these critical systems, right? We don't want our customers to be in a position where they have to go and react to new threats, react to alerts, rather than proactively go on and stop features from happening in the environment. That's the approach that we want to take. And as an end result of that, what you will see is, an implementation of an approach which takes into account zero trust approach on the workload security part. Right? What it does is it helps us reducing the attack surface, right? So things like application control, script control, etc. that we do, it gives immediate time to security, right? In fact, if you look at the IBM's and Ponemon Institute's report also, so this is the implementation of zero trust approach is straight away 25% reduction in the cost of breach. And that's a huge success very early into the deployment or deployment cycle. At the same time, there is a runtime approach also where we go and stop attacks very deterministically. Idea is to kill the kill chain very early, and I'll talk about that also in a few seconds, and do that across the application stack, which is super critical because you talk about workload in the sense that there is an operating system and there is probably a web service, a web application running on it. You have to look at that security holistically also, right? You can't have two different strategies because then eventually from an attacker's perspective, right, attackers are leveraging all those aspects of your workload, be it a web-facing custom application that might be running on it, or be it the operating system, native operating system processes that might be running on it. So with this approach, what happens is our customers see an immediate value. They are able to expand their coverage very quickly across their workloads, different kind of workloads, different kind of services that are running on them, and get rid of the silos that they might have been using or they might have been contemplating to deploy, which also reduces the operation overhead. So both the operation cost as well as the cost of breach with our approach goes down drastically. And that has been our experiences with our customers across the globe. So what would be the end result, right? Again, going back to the kill chain, the idea is to stop, as I said, kill the kill chain much early. And whenever there is an execution that is happening, execution of malicious activities that are happening on the server, right? Be it at the exploitation level, be it at the point where malwares are getting dropped and executed, attackers is trying to get some remote access to the system, using some defense evasion techniques, at all those places, Virsec would be able to go on and detect deterministically, immediately, right? And not only do that, but also stop the attack. So essentially making this whole concept of detect the attack and then trigger a response to it completely relevant. And in majority of those cases, because we have acted much early in the cycle, you don't even have to, you don't even let the rest of the stages go on, right? We have handled the attack much early in the protection cycle, in the kill chain itself. And to do that, right, we take an approach wherein this deterministic protection platform that we're talking about works across all your server infrastructure. This could be hosted on your on-premise, virtual machines, public cloud platforms, container workloads, and any kind of applications that might be running on these platforms, right? Could be a COTS application, custom web application that is built in-house or by a third party for you, legacy platforms and applications, and even in the OT world also. So the idea is to kind of use approach what we call as an app map, which is essentially on a high level, fundamentally mapping the applications or developers' intent and map it at the host level, web level, and the memory level. The idea is to provide a full stack protection where you can ensure that attackers cannot exploit the system in its entirety, right? Be it a web service that might be running where OWASP top 10 kind of attacks might be coming in. At the host level, attacker might try to drop a malware or exploit a vulnerability, Principler, for example, into the system. And at the web layer also, any kind of, and the memory layer also, wherein attacker may try to use living off the land kind of attacks or very sophisticated binary attacks that are exploits that are targeting binary applications like Robkin, etc. We are able to go on and detect and stop against all those kind of attacks very accurately, and not only detect that but also stop that also, right? And to do that, there are fundamentally two things that we are doing. As I said previously, number one, reduce the attack surface, taking a zero trust approach towards this, which is where we go and map what all processes, libraries, scripts are allowed on the system, whether they are safe and they can be trusted or not. And there are multiple ways to identify that, operationalize it very quickly so that you only have trusted executables running on your systems. And even with those trusted executables also, for example, something like a PowerShell, right? You trust that executable, but the intent of the attacker might be malicious in using that PowerShell command to do some more damage. And that's where for those living off the land kind of binaries, we restrict the use of those processes, those trusted processes also further in a much more acceptable manner. It can be a positive security or negative security model as well. And in environments where you are using some sort of golden images, trusted images, for example, container would be a very good example. We can enforce drift prevention, which will ensure that only the way container images were created by your developers, only that particular software, that particular version of software runs on the system. Anything else will not run at all on the system. And to complement that, we have the runtime security aspect, wherein we do binary control flow integrity, wherein we go to the details of memory addresses to look at the various branching that are happening during the control transfer of the binary applications in the memory space, and then enforce the correct execution during the runtime. You also go and stop against attacks and threats that are typically categorized under OAS top 10 for web applications, right? So injection kind of attack, cross-site scripting, remote or local file inclusions. These are also some of the attacks that we go on and detect and stop very accurately because of the way we work in the runtime, and we have the visibility on how does the application work. And all this happens without any sort of learning, without any sort of AI or ML in place, or even for that matter, without any sort of signature or updates in place. That's why the deterministic protection comes into place. So at the end, what you get is your infrastructure, your applications. We go and put which are being accessed by your users, internal as well as external. Right? We go and place our sensors on those servers. It could be VM, it could be on public cloud, an EC2 instance or Azure VM, or it could also be a container workload that might be running on a Kubernetes managed or otherwise kind of platform. Also, we would go and place a sensor on your application workloads, which will essentially, number one, map the right way in which the application is supposed to work, which is what we call as an app map. Subsequently, also does a runtime analysis on how is this application running. Is that in line with mapping the app map that we have created? And if we see deviation, if we find deviations, then of course go on and take protection actions immediately to stop those attacks from happening as well. And all of that is managed through a centralized management console, which can be deployed on-premise or in future on public cloud as well. You can leverage APIs to bring in a lot of automation as well. And at the same time, we can go and integrate with a SIEM solution or your SOC or any orchestration platform that we might be using to make sure that our solution becomes part of your overall security operations as well. So as I said, we are a mission-driven company, right? Our objective is to fully protect your workloads, to fully protect your software infrastructure so that you can focus what is important for you or your IT organizations, for the businesses, right? Because run the business, serve your customers, serve your constituents, and whatever the case may be, right? So the primary objective is to provide full protection and make a cyber threat non-issue, especially when it comes to 0 days, right? Ability to give you an ability to detect and stop those attacks much faster. We really don't want you to wait for the next patch or next signature update or a definition update to come in, or for the IUCs to be available in public domain. We don't really want you to wait for that. Those things are good from an post-factor incident response and in forensic perspective. But then the idea is that you don't want to wait for those things to be able to go on and stop something malicious happening in your environment, even if it is exploiting a 0-day vulnerability. So that's the way we improve the security coverage by eliminating those blind spots typically that are there across. There are blind spots that are coming from advanced attacks, 0-day threats. We provide faster detection and protection, detection in real time. So you don't have to really wait for months, minutes and hours. In some cases, just last week, we had a ransomware situation with one of our prospect, and we deployed with them over the weekend, and they had an existing EDR solution, and they clearly said that the EDR had a lot of dwell time. Essentially, by the time EDR was able to detect anything, the ransomware in their environment, it was too late for them. The damage was already done. But we were able to contain that damage once we deploy our product over the weekend, and that's fast we can today, right? But we were able to contain the damage and then further also give them a good set of assurance that any such activities in future can be detected and stopped very easily. Now, to top it up, right, it's important because you see a lot of security products and the operational cost, right, operational overhead, that's a concern also for a lot of IT organizations, wherein our approach essentially helps you bring down that operation cost because, to some extent, it may help you consolidate your point solutions to reduce your capital expenditure. But the OPEX also, right? The reduction in OPEX can be seen very drastically as you see immediate return of investment, because you don't have to really have an army of, say, malware researchers or application security experts to be able to go on and manage our solution, or for that matter, even analyze our incidents that are coming in, right? There is no analysis needed as such. The incidents that are coming in are deterministic. We have stopped the attack most of the time, and you don't really have to worry much about it. Most likely, just the reporting part of it is what can be operationalized through the SOC. also help you eliminate the risk of to the brand reputation, right? Because that is the number one thing, right? There is of course a monetary part of it, but then the brand damage that happens to because of these breaches is also very something that that you want to handle. And of course, help you with a solution which is easy to manage, is not adding a lot of operational overhead, even for your IT teams also, right? Because these are very critical infrastructure, server infrastructure, and you don't want a lot of operational changes to the way IT works. So no learning, no tuning, no signatures, or no policy updates whatsoever, right? With that kind of approach, what we are in a position to do is uh, make these zero-day threats completely irrelevant, right? So that you don't really have to kind of run behind identifying and then fixing those patches, applying those patches in your environment. You can be much more peaceful in your approach towards how do you handle these incidents and so on. Yeah, with that, what I'm going to now do is I'm going to request Satyavrat sir to share some more insights on this aspect.
Rohan, great session. Can I ask a question before we transfer it over to Satyavrat? So,
Sure.
You might know at EliteCISO, we run a very active fitness community, and we did this Elite Fit offsite at the, I think, second week of December. And we went to Corbett, right? We had about 70-75 CISOs. For that weekend, they were in a resort. That was the weekend when the Log4j vulnerability came out, right? Half of the CISOs with their laptop went back to their rooms instead of running the 10K or 5K in the morning. How does your solution help us address this problem, right? Log4j kind of issue. Can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Yes, absolutely. And Log4j was a big
I'm sorry. I think we've got Rohan a bit lag.
Yeah, it's just not me, right?
No, it's not just you. Just give us a second. Yeah.
Maybe what we can do is we can park this question and we can go to Satyavrat.
Sure.
And then start his session. Later on, we'll come back to this question.
Yes, that'll be great.
Over to you.
Okay. Thanks, Vikas, and thanks, Rohan, for that insightful session. Good morning, everybody. I'm Satyavrat from Godrej Industries, and I take care of cybersecurity for the Godrej Group. Coming to today's topic, basically, I just wanted to quickly give a brief introduction of, though Godrej does not really require an introduction. It's a 150-year-old conglomerate in India. But we have a large operations and are into a variety of businesses spanning across FMCG to realty to agribusiness, chemical, and spread across around 15 different countries. Right, overall around 10,000 employees who are based out of this entire geography, and overall somewhere around 650 odd servers, which are again spread across private cloud, public cloud, and locally hosted applications. So this is what is the overall geographical, I would say, spread of the organization, and that is what makes somehow this entire managing the security operation kind of complex. As along with these offices, we are also into manufacturing, so a lot of SCADA, OT systems, etc., which are there. A lot of automated plants, especially the chemical plants, which are completely fully automated with a lot of hydrogenation and those kind of processes. So within this organization, last couple of years, if I would summarize, the kind of threats that we perceive, which are really going to impact, and some of these obviously would be common, and most of other organizations would also face the similar kind of threats. If I prioritize it, I think the biggest and the topmost would be that always is the scary one, is the ransomware attack, right? And because that is the most disruptive one and so sudden, and along with that, if it comes via a zero-day attack, then obviously it makes life even more difficult, because you really do not have any reaction time or time to take stop it, right? Apart from that, what we also see within our organization, now that the cloud adoption has increased, a lot of these vulnerabilities and issues related to the cloud configuration, cloud posture management, monitoring of those kind of things, that is another area that is causing another set of problems. Phishing has always remained, one constant factor, despite the fact that you may have one of the best, solution, anti-phishing solution. You might train your employees, give all kinds of training, but that's something that is perennial. Another area that currently, which is on our top priority and which is what we are focusing on, is obviously the OT security, because for last so many years, typically the plant systems were managed locally by the the guys who are working on the factories. ITs and security teams involvement were very, very limited. But with the proliferation of IoT and digitalization and so many things that is happening, so that has suddenly come up into radar, and that is another area that within Godrej, and I'm sure a lot of other manufacturing companies that I know about are focusing around securing their OT implementations. Social engineering, data loss prevention, and finally another area that currently, which is very, very prevalent, is overall your digital footprint monitoring. Even the social media, your web pages, websites, etc. So complete digital asset footprint monitoring, and ensuring that because especially in our kind of industry where Godrej Properties is there are a lot of fake websites which gets often created by brokers, and then people start calling. So that is another pain area that currently we are focusing on. So these are our current trends and top priorities. Now coming to today's specific topic, before I touch upon that, I just wanted to look at the evolution of cybersecurity, predominantly right from 1970s when ARPANET came into existence and the first creeper was created. Till now, I think the entire cybersecurity has always been a reactive approach, right, and heavily dependent on the network side. So, and that is what has happened over a period of time, that people have created a lot of network-based security solutions, next generation firewalls, initially firewalls and next generation firewalls, UTM devices, IPS, IDS, and so many advancements that have happened. Gradually it came to a situation where SIEMs came into picture, collecting logs and trying to do correlation, and then seeing if something anomalous is happening within the organization and then taking action on it. But all of this, I would say, overall, even though there has been a lot of evolution which has happened, a lot of automation has happened recently with the launch of these source solutions and a lot of automations which has happened. Overall, maybe the mean time to identify and mean time to respond may have reduced considerably from what it used to be long back, but still, considering a large ransomware kind of attack or a zero-day attack, these MTTR and MTTI cannot really stop such attacks to happen, right? With the traditional kind of approach that most organizations take. So the further advancement that has happened in these areas are like the same set of solutions started working on heuristics and then fuzzy logic, and recently a lot of solutions are being sold as in AI and ML based algorithms have been worked on this. But it's still the biggest challenge that remains in cybersecurity in current day and time is the number of false positives. When the number of alerts that our SOC team typically days in a sea, and by the time first of all that comes in their bucket, by the time they do the triaging and then identify which one are the actual ones and which ones are the the false positives, a lot of time is already spent, right? So a large kind of attack and sophisticated kind of attack, if it happens, this traditional SOC is never going to be able to stop it in 100%, because anyways none of the security solution is 100%. But with that approach, perhaps anyways it will not be possible. And that is the reason, I mean, one of the statistics that says that 76% of the zero-day attacks have been successful so far. So this is one of the the biggest challenges that most organizations, including ours, face. And over a period of time, there are a lot of things that have come up. A lot of evolution has happened. Zero trust may be one of the ways. In the recent times, most of the organizations have started working on the zero trust adoption. There are various approaches. Somebody will go for ZTNA and various other solutions. But ultimately, the objective again here is to stop the bad guys from reaching to your crown jewels or whatever is of value to you. So still, a lot of effort is being made at, again from a stopping at a network layer itself, right? But since nothing is 100%, eventually someday somebody will be able to reach, and then what happens? So this is the area which often keeps us awake at night. I would say that in case if such kind of attacks, and it keeps on happening with a large frequency over last period of couple of months. If you see whether it is Log4j or even before, so many others that have happened. So this is an area where perhaps what we really need is a solution that is not so much dependent on a person, right, getting a log and trying to understand whether it is right or wrong and then take action. See, when it comes to our critical production servers, we would want a solution which can, on a real time, on a runtime, is able to determine whether this particular service or this particular behavior which is occurring in that particular application, whether it is right or wrong, and then take action immediately. Later on, somebody can go and verify and check and maybe do some kind of incident reporting, etc. But that initial reaction time is of very important in order to be able to protect that. And I think this is one area that so far Rohan spoke about, and that is what we have been running for last, I think, more than 1.5 years. We have been using this solution, Virsec, in our organization, and more than around 600 plus kind of servers which are spread across private cloud, public cloud are protected. So specifically, if I talk about what kind of benefits that we have got, see, one is obviously the reduction of overall false positives, right? Because in a given day, various other solutions. So we have all kinds of solution from IPS, which sends an alert, to deception solution. We have recently implemented micro-segmentation also, and various other solutions from mail security to endpoint security. So with so many alerts coming in, obviously any security team is overwhelmed with what is of the real priority and where to really take an action. So from that perspective, I think at least what we see is that the number of false positives at least coming from this particular solution, and therefore the team's ability and organization's ability to be resilient to such kind of attacks, I would say has perhaps increased. Because we have tried over a period of time, last couple of years, different solutions, but unfortunately all those solutions require too much of configuration, too much of monitoring, too much of fine-tuning, right? And in my personal view, I think any security solution that requires too much of tweaking is never going to be able to serve the purpose, because you will never be able to have that kind of expertise over a period of time, right? Continuously having a set of highly skilled people to be able to protect 24/7 is impossible, and therefore the only way to achieve it is by having a solution that is intelligent enough, that can understand the application's behavior, and then deterministically take an action that, okay, this is the right action and this is the wrong action, and therefore I am stopping this. I would say, while so these kind of solution, I mean, Virsec may be just one of them, there may be many others. While everybody would claim that these are there's no false positive, but that would not be 100% accurate. Every solution that has been created so far would have some element of false positives in that. But compared to the traditional approach, as I was talking about, the numbers are very less and very insignificant, and therefore it would not really disrupt your operations, right? So now coming to the last piece, in terms of its ability to take action on all the three layers, right? So typically in an organization, you would implement a web solution to take care of your web security, and then there are separate, solutions which are being sold to take care of just the in-memory kind of protection, and then finally the host protection, which is your, either antivirus or deep security solution. But this is the only solution that we could, see in the market that could have all the three together in one place, right? And therefore, it certainly gives us, far more basically confidence that this is something that can solve all 3 or 4 problems together. And and in case if there are some kind of zero-day attack that might happen in future, so far we have not really seen such kind of attacks. But in case in future if something like that happens, then perhaps this would be the right solution that would be able to protect our crown jewels. So that is what I wanted to share in brief. And now I would hand it over to Vikas. Thank you very much.
Great, Satyavrat. Thanks a lot. Really appreciate you talking about your experience basically deploying Virsec in your environment. Guys, it is open for Q&A. If you want to ask any questions, please raise your hand. While you raise your hand, let me ask one quick question. So, Satyavrat, did you replace any solution when you implemented Virsec? So, for example, let's say EDR is there, WEF is there, other in-memory protection solutions are there. So, as CISOs, we deploy a lot of stuff. When you zeroed down on Virsec, did you replace EDR? Did you replace anything else? And the second part of the question is, you might have multiple solutions, right? When you deployed Virsec, how did it improve your overall security operation? Did it reduce the load for your team, less alerts, less fatigue? What your experience has been?
Sure. So to answer the first question, I do not wish to take the name of the solution, but yes, we had a deep security solution for our servers, which is what was replaced. And we therefore did not implement a separate WEF solution as such, because we believe that both the WEF component, the web security component, the host component, and the in-memory, we did do evaluation, though we did not implement a separate in-memory security solution, because since this had that component. So, but for any organization which might have these three as a separate implementation, yeah, it can be a area of where all of these can be consolidated into one, and perhaps it can bring in some kind of, not just from a monetary point of view, but overall, management is always a problem. Like 3 different expertise, 3 different alerts, and monitoring it and taking action. So all of that can be combined into one. The second part of it, in terms of operational efficiency, yes, of course, because as I said, because of the less number of false positives, we do not really have to, because otherwise there were just too many tickets and people would go and then try and see whether, this was really, a malicious kind of services or malicious operations that was happening, or it was a false positive. So to that extent, it has completely come down, right? So now the focus is more on, the team is able to focus more on the other areas and try and do, the improvement in those areas. Also, since our operation is spread across multiple countries, the SOC is anyway overwhelmed, because there are operations when India is sleeping, US is working, and then there's Indonesia and Africa. There are a lot of servers which are locally hosted, and the kind of security skill set and overall skill set also, if you see in these areas, is a big problem, right? So therefore we wanted a very simplistic kind of approach, and ever since we have implemented, because we had long back in LATAM with one incident, because anyways the teams there do not really have such good skill set in security. But ever since we have implemented this in last 2 years, we have not had any kind of incident in these areas.
Very nice, good to know. Thanks a lot. And my burning question is still there, right, Rohan? You are back. Did you get part of the question? My concern of people, going to their room with the laptop and addressing the Log4j instead of running. So how does Virsec helps in a situation like Log4j?
Right. So if you look at Log4j, right, it's essentially a lot of the action is happening in the runtime, right? So if you just look at the HTTP payload and try to detect, attackers will find ways to bypass it. They'll use various sort of obfuscation and encoding techniques, and they'll bypass to stop those kind of activities in in the perimeter. And I'll quickly share my screen also to kind of show how we do it also, right? So here I have a demo environment, which is where we have an application which is running the vulnerable version of Log4j. It is also being front-ended by another application, which is Struts, right? And I've taken one of the publicly available exploits to kind of run this. If you see, this exploit is essentially taking the application's details as a target, and also the LDAP server, which is an important aspect of this attack, right? Because attacker, what they want is they want the target servers, target applications, target vulnerable Log4j service to communicate to a LDAP system from where they can download the malicious stuff, right? And without any configuration, additional configuration, without any signature updates, we were able to detect this attacks very early. So if I go and run this exploit, you can see on this target system 240, I am able to execute some code remotely. In this case, to simplistically prove the point, we have popped the calculator app on this, but then attacker can leverage it to download certain stuff and then open a remote connection and so on and so forth. If you see right now, the attack was successful, right? 200, and we were able to execute it. But if you want to kind of make it, if you want to stop this attack, it is rather quite simple as well. All we need to go is I go to applications. Expand this. I'll go to applications, and essentially what I'm now going to do is put this particular application into protect mode, right? Right now it was in detect mode only, but most of our customers very quickly are able to go into protect mode because there is no learning as such, right? Now, so the confidence level that they get from our product is much more quicker, and they are able to go into protect mode. So if I go and click on edit, and this also gives you a peek into the configuration. For example, this is about web applications. All you have to select is which vulnerability you want to protect your application against. Underlying, nothing else is additionally required. No rule updates, no custom rules, etc. So I go and put this particular application into protect mode, and what this will allow us to do is immediately now this particular application will be in the protect mode. And if I go and run the same attack again, and let's go to incident screen so that you can see what's happening there also. So I'm going to run the same attack again, and you see, the response code was 403, and the calculator did not execute. And in fact, in the incidents also, we say that this particular attack, which we detect as a remote file inclusion attack, in this case, it was blocked. And not only that, from an later on forensic perspective, right? You have all the details about this attack. What was the attacker IP code, which URL, what was the session ID, process ID, and of course, what was the malicious part of the payload. Now, the important aspect here is, one can go and detect at the HTTP level also, but you can't really be conclusive enough, and you can't really be accurate enough unless you do this in the runtime, wherein in the Java application, right? This is Java application, we are also able to see how the Java interacts with the LDAP server in this case. Right? So that is what the differentiator of runtime. That's where the differentiation of the deterministic protection comes in, and we were able to detect and stop. A funny story, our customer success team had some of our team members had deployed some test environments on public cloud. The moment it was released, and we started seeing attacks on it immediately.
Awesome, Rohan. Where were you last year? Great. Amazing, great. So we have 3 people have raised their hand. Devbhai, can you unmute Ashokji, Amitji, and Alok, and let's have their questions?
Yes, absolutely. I will unmute them.
Ashok sir, go ahead. Please ask a question.
Hi, sir. Great. Thanks, Vikas bhai. Thanks for a good start we got in the year 2022. My question is, like the deterministic approach sounds like a fairy tale, right? Means we can thwart the attack at the, you can nip in the bud itself. First part of the question is, do you have certain data that wherein we have been able to nip this zero in bud? And second part is, can you elaborate on how your solution is different from EDR?
Yeah. So the demo that we just saw, right, the Log4j, right, we were able to stop this attack from day one without actually having to go on and create any additional rule or additional signature, right? Because that's anyways not relevant. That's not even a part of how a product works. And that's part of deterministic, right? And there are two aspects to it. Number one is we essentially make sure that the number one, only trusted files, trusted executables are running on the system, right? And once you identify that, let's say we identify that there is a Java application and only these certain files which are part of the applications are supposed to run on the system, we also further go and enforce that during the runtime. So take an example. Let's say if you have a web server, Apache web server, and it has a buffer overflow vulnerability. Now, what attacker is trying to do is attacker is trying to execute or inject shell code into the system, into this particular application remotely. And eventually they want to run their own shell code. They want to run their own code, right? That's what attacker wants to do in the majority of the cases, which means that, down to the level of memory addresses in this particular case, there will be some deviation. The program, when it loads into the memory, it is loaded into certain aspects of the memory addresses. But then when attacker is trying to exploit a vulnerability, it will try to transfer the control of that program from those set memory addresses to something totally different, right? And that's something you can identify very deterministically, and that's what we are doing as an example. Similarly, for web application, in this case, we see some JNDI queries coming in as HTTP request, but we also see that the same query is also being used from a communication from Java, in this case, to LDAP server, right? These two things can be correlated easily, and then we can go and tell you that this is something wrong, which is happening, because Java as a service or Java as an application in this case is trying to communicate to an LDAP based on some user input. It's eventually it's all driven by user input, right? The files, the user input that they have provided, and then correlate to what is happening in this runtime. That's what allows us to be kind of very deterministic. Again, second part of your question, right? A lot of EDRs would take a lot of time depend on two things. One is telemetry, and they need huge amount of telemetry, right? Every single action that is happening on the servers, file activities, process activities, and all, and then build an AI or ML model around it. It could be positive security, it could be negative security, right? Positive security lacks context because it doesn't know that you are running a SharePoint on your server, right? Because that context is important, so that SharePoint is allowed to run in a way SharePoint should be running and not blocked, right? And the negative security is where it's always the cat and mouse game. You are always one step behind the attacker. So by the time you have the model updated to accommodate that negative security, to accommodate that latest threat that might have come in, it's too late. The damage is already done, right? And we don't do that. We don't have any sort of learning. We don't take a lot of telemetry. Whatever I spoke about, deterministic protection is what our focus is around.
Great, thanks, Rohan. So we have got like 1 minute left, and a lot of people have raised their hands. So short question and short answer, please.
Yeah.
Hereby, please unmute Alok Malik and Amit Bhatia both.
Hello.
Yeah, Amit, go ahead, please.
Yeah, hi. Thank you, Rohan. Thank you, Satyavrat, for an interesting session to give us a brief snippet about the zero-day attack. Now, my question is specifically to Mr. Satyavrat. As you are aware that in today's world, the technology is in place to have your defense in depth approach and to move forward on the zero trust approach, as a part of your cybersecurity strategy. Now, my query is specific as an head of information security is what actually makes you believe that to take the decision making that the technology is doing the transition from a reactive to a proactive. First thing, and the second thing is during the POC or at a POC for this solution, for how much time this solution was in a promiscuous mode, and to make it into a protected mode. So the two specific thing I just wanted to know.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so as you rightly mentioned, in overall stack of things, because it is always going to be a multi-layered approach. It is not going to be like this solution comes in and then rest everything will go away. And so from that perspective, this is one of the in overall security stack, this is one of the important elements and component. But having said that, we also have the ZDNA implementation and various other zero trust security solutions. Over and above that, we have covered all the 3 pillars of zero trust and going up to the micro segmentation, because nothing is 100%, right? So tomorrow, while we have a lot of faith and hope that this solution works and it stops such kind of zero-day and ransomware attacks. But in case if that also fails, then we rely on the micro-segmentation and ensure that at least the damage is limited only to certain set of workloads and it does not spread across. Right. So from that extent, this is just going to be one more element in your overall security portfolio. For the other question in terms of moving from protection, I mean, what is that? Monitoring to protection. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, initially, even when you move, implement this solution to any particular application, our approach has been that we always start with the dev QA kind of setup, just so that this application understands, better. Once it runs fine there, so typically a month to 45 days to run, just to gather all the statistics, and then finally move it to the protect mode. So that has been the approach. So while for the entire stack of things, it may take some time, but that is what is we have done. Within our
sure. Thank you so much. Yeah,
great, thanks. 12:03. Let's take one last question. I hate to delay the sessions and all, but yeah, let's take one more question because it's a great insights coming from Satyavrat. Not every day you can find experts like him, so let's take one more question. Alok, go ahead, ask your question. Dev,
sure.
Can you unmute?
I'll make it really short. Thank you. Thanks for the great session. So the question is basically, is there any manual effort required to operate your solution so that it stops the attacks in real time? And if yes, then what kind of effort would that be?
Right. So there is no additional effort in stopping the attacks, right? It's just that there are two aspects to it. One is the installation part where we have our probes, the agents essentially that get installed on the servers, right? And then identifying what security posture you want for the systems, right? So the example that I was showing was what kind of vulnerabilities you want to protect against, and so on and so forth. I think that's about it more or less, right? The onboarding part, identifying what all processes could be allowed, not allowed. A lot of it is manual, right? So the whole app map generation that we spoke about, a large majority of it is actually all automatic. So even if you, let's say, have a .NET application that we want to onboard, right? We install the agent, we provide some information about it, what kind of application it is, and then the onboarding is done, and you are essentially ready to use that particular application in protect mode also.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Because just one last point, which is because of a very important question asked by Charanjit. Do you cover SaaS, DAST, and RAS capabilities? And also, you've already answered how we are different from WAF and EDR, but there is also this thing that do you claim that you respond, your response time for remediation is less than 1 millisecond for all zero-day attacks? You're muted, Ron, if you could unmute.
Sorry. So to the first question, SaaS, DAST, right? And I think the focus in those application security testing is more about identifying vulnerabilities. That is not our focus today, but we might get into that direction also. But then our focus first place is to kind of protect against those kind of vulnerabilities that are typically identified using these tools. But we understand that it might be well worth to kind of also help you with getting visibility on the vulnerabilities that exist in your system also. So we might take that direction. The second question was around I think the
response,
second time, right? So
response, yes.
Yeah. So for all practical purposes, right, there is no, the response is essentially the action, right? So the example that you saw, the moment I put the application into protect mode, we were able to immediately stop their attack. So there is no additional response that I need to trigger to be able to go on and take action, right? The moment we see something malicious going on, let's say even if a malicious process malware starts on a server, we'll go and stop it immediately. So there is no additional response lag or dwell time that is required because nobody has to really go and look at the incidents and do triaging.
Great. Thanks, Rohan. 12:06, guys. So I'm going to rush it. Thanks a lot for joining the session. Amazing session delivered by Rohan and Satyavrat both. Guys, if you want to download your participation certificate, what you got to do is go to EliteCISOs website, click on events, click on upcoming events. click on CPE certificate. This will take you to a separate Google form. Put your email address over here where you want the certificate. Put your full name, and the password to download certificate is fitness333. FITNESS 333, right? That's the password. And once you enter that, you will get a certificate like this. Why fitness 333 as the password? Because as I mentioned initially, at EliteCISO, we run a very active fitness group. So in 2021, we had taken 325 days of fitness challenge. So that means that every single day out of 365, for 325 days, you got to be active, right? Many people achieved that. Many CIOs and CISOs completed that challenge. So year 2022, we have raised the bar a little bit, and we have taken a challenge of 333 days of fitness challenge. So today is the 20th day. You still have a chance to participate in this 333 days of challenge. What if you want to, join the fitness group? What you can do is go to the social initiative section, click on CISO Fitness, and then click on register now. So once you register it, I'll get your details and we will put you in a separate EliteCISO Fitness group. Believe me, guys, it's an amazing group. The kind of energy that you get from this group is amazing. Okay, I'm rushing a little bit because we are late. So if you are already on the website, what you can do is, if you are not EliteCISO's member, you can go ahead and click on membership link over here and submit the form for becoming the EliteCISO member. And the community or the groups these are the closed groups, and the membership is only for corporate CIO or CISOs. So if you're a corporate CIO, CISO, or not EliteCISO's member as yet, go to the website, fill this membership form. With this, what do we have left is the Wheel of Fortune, I believe. So Wheel of Fortune looks very cluttered today. So we had 601 participants or registrations coming in for this. All the 601 registrations are here. I see 194 people right now in the session. We had about 215 to the maximum. I will spin it once. If your name comes, we will send a smartwatch, a fitness tracker, because that's what we promote. So you will get a nice smartwatch to track your fitness. 600 people in the list, 200 people attending the session. So I'm not sure if I spin, your name comes or not. I do not want to keep spinning it. We'll spin it for, let's say, 5 times. And in those 5 times, your name should come. If the name does not come, then I'll keep the watch. Okay, guys, good luck. I'm spinning it now. Let's see. So the first lucky one, or the first name it is going to pick is, let's see, Mr. Devesh Solanki from NetMagic Solution. If Mr. Devesh, you are there, go to the chat and say yes. You got to be quick. Can somebody monitor the chat, please? I don't see.
Yes, I am. He's not here, I guess.
Okay. He's not here. I'm going to spin it again. And Piyush asked for the password. The password is fitness333, all small case. FITNESS 333. And the second round, Mr. Vinay. Mr. Vinay is member from Mumbai chapter. Mr. Vinay, if you are there, go to the chat and say yes. If you are not there, I'm going to spin it one more time, which is the, I see it is.
Mr. Vinay is here.
Mr. Vinay is there. Awesome. Awesome. Congratulations, Mr. Vinay. Glad that you got it. You are not member of EliteCISO Fitness Club. You must be. You must become the member, right? Go to the site, apply for it. That's about it, I believe, guys. Thanks a lot. Really enjoyed having you. Really enjoyed hosting this session. Bye for now. The recording will be available on the site any which ways. Thank you. Bye for now.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.